One day, a car was driving along the road. There was a girl in the back, and her uncle and her parents were gone. She arrived to her uncle's house, and it looked kind of weird, but she got out of the car and said, or rather, her parents were in the car, and she said, "Bye, Mom, love you," and they dropped him off, and she walked into the house. She slowly got used to the house and her uncle. But her uncle, what he did for work was chop off chickens' heads. The uncle would very vigorously chop off the chickens' heads, but understand that when the chicken's head was cut off, they would still run around with no head, just their body would run all over the place, all over, and then he would toss their heads out in the trash. The girl would look at it and say, "Oh, that's weird." So one night, just like normal, they ate dinner. And, he told her, "Okay, go to bed. But in the morning, don't wake up. You need to stay asleep through the morning." So she said, "Okay, whatever." So she went to sleep all night long. And then the next morning at 2:30 in the morning, she heard chickens. "Bap, bap." And she just felt like she needed to open her eyes. So even though her uncle told her not to open her eyes, she opened her eyes. And all of a sudden, there was 100 chicken heads all over. Bop, 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 bop. She was so scared. She had never seen them like this. So she hid her head under her covers and said, "Don't get me, don't get me." So the next morning, they were gone. So she decided not to tell her uncle because her uncle told her not to get up. So she kept her mouth shut. The next day she went to watch her uncle chop off the heads, and she looked over and she saw a big pile of chicken body, or a big black bag, and she said, "What's that?" And the uncle said, "Oh, those are the chicken heads. That's where I put them." So she said, "Oh, okay." So she thought, "Uncle, do you have a wife? Are you married?" And her uncle said, I gotta get back to work." So he kept chopping up the chicken heads, and so she thought it was weird that he was so hesitant about that question. So again, the next night, she got in her bed and she went to sleep, and again she heard it. Bop, bop, bop. She was so scared, but she opened one of her eyes, and all of a sudden, again, there was chicken heads all over and blood. Bop, 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 bop. Over and over and over again, all over. She didn't know what to do. She was so scared. She threw her head under her covers. The next morning, again, she woke up and they were gone. She thought that was so weird, and her heart was pounding. But, early in the morning, she went down and she was looking around at the chickens. It smelled like a dead body in there. So she kept looking, and she found a drawer. So she opened the drawer, and she found a sandwich, or rather a book. And it's true. Uncle was married before. But she found some interesting things about voodoo. There was a doll that, voodoo, you stick a pin in the doll and then that actual person feels that pain. She was in there, and all of a sudden her uncle came and said, "What are you doing?" And she got so scared, she jumped and she ran out. But then she started wondering about that wife in the voodoo doll. Why isn't she alive anymore? So she kept wondering about it. She didn't know what to do. That night, again, it got dark. The girl's heart was pounding. She couldn't go to sleep. Her heart was pounding and pounding and pounding. She finally got under her covers and fell asleep. She didn't hear the chickens anymore. She went to sleep, but then she felt a vibration. She felt it. She woke up again, and for the third time, she was so scared, she opened one of her eyes, and right in front of her, there was a woman. She was completely naked and drenched in blood. But there was a chicken. There was a chicken head on the woman's body, and the body got closer and closer and closer and closer. So she got up out of her bed and she ran. And the chicken body it was running after her. The girl ran all the way down the stairs. She was so scared, and her uncle said, "Don't wake up, don't wake up." But then she saw the body. So she ran downstairs and she got her uncle, and her uncle saw. He got out his gun and boom! Shot it again. Boom! But then the uncle died, and the chicken head body was still coming after her. She didn't know, so she threw her body to the floor, but then she saw that it was still coming at her. Closer and closer and closer, with the chicken head and the woman body closer and closer and closer. The smell was awful. She didn't know what to do. So she thought about the voodoo. She thought maybe she could do something with the doll. So she was scrounging around in the barn looking for the voodoo doll. But the body was still coming at her. She looked under and she found. But what she found was the uncle's dead wife's body. The voodoo doll had killed the actual body. She realized that this was just a ghost. She screamed and she ran out of the barn. But she couldn't find the woman chicken. She was nowhere to be found. And from then on, there was peace at the barn. But then, all of a sudden, there was the chicken!